I just came back from France and Belgium on a World War I battlefield tour by leisure holidays, all quiet on the Western Front. I thought I'd make a little historic video voicing over what I did, where I visited, and the history behind some of the places. On the first day of the tour, we started by visiting the excellent historical de la Grande Guerre Museum. So on this day, the Battle of the Somme, which began on a summer's day in July 1916 and ended in a snowstorm 4.5 months later. It was a battle of contrasts from the blackest day when 57,000 became casualties to the first use of tanks and the change in approach to fighting on the Western Front. In this museum we saw a selection of old items and outfits. This is an example of what a French soldier's uniform looks like. These are the average items that each soldier would be carrying around with them all day, every day. This is an example of what a German soldier's uniform looks like. This is an example of what an American soldier's uniform looked like. After the museum, we drove through some fields where battles took place, and we stopped to take in these sights. In this particular field, the direction I'm filming in is where the British front line was. Then visited the Loch Nagar mine crater. This is located in a little commune in France called La Boisselle. This is the largest British mine crater surviving on the battlefields. This was caused by the British digging mines underneath to the Germans, packing the mines with loads of TNT and dynamite. Then, when they blew it up, 400 plus Germans were blew into the air with no expectation that it was going to happen. The explosion took place on July 1st, 1916. And here's an example of what a mine explosion looked like of the same scale. Next, we stopped at the Ulster Memorial Tower to have lunch. This is Northern Ireland's National War Memorial. It was one of the first memorials to be erected on the Western Front and commemorates the men of the 36th Division and all of those from Ulster who served in the First World War. Next, we visited the Newfoundland Memorial Park. This park contains undisturbed trenches and battlefield, meaning it has been left untouched and naturally softened up, meaning you can still see the craters and the dents where the trenches were. The battle that took place here took place on the 1st of July 1916, and the Newfoundland Regiment, part of the 29th Division, attacked the Germans. The regiment experienced heavy losses, and only 68 of the 800 soldiers were left answering the roll call on the next day after the battle. Here you can see the remains of the Newfoundland Regiment trench. In the background there you can see a memorial to the regiment represented by a caribou, which was their emblem. Here, as you can see, I'm walking through the Newfoundland Regiment frontline trench, looking out over the no man's land. This was a frontline trench used in the battle. All of the fenced off area is untouched land, with craters, unexploded shells, lots of equipment and several bodies still under there that have not been excavated or found yet. On this trench you can still see the steel bars that were used to reinforce the front line. This tree was standing during the battle. It was used by soldiers for cover. It's called the Danger Tree and is located halfway between the Newfoundland Regiment front line and the German front line trench. Here you can see some smaller craters. And here I reach the German front line trench, looking back up the hill to where the Newfoundland Regiment front line trench is. If you can, I really recommend reading more about this battle because it's very interesting. It very much shows the brutality of the First World War. This is a monument to the 51st Highland Division, which was a Scottish Territorial Army division that served in both World War I and World War II. Here is a map of the area. You can see the Newfoundland frontline trench at number 7 and the German frontline trench at number 9. Here is an original picket that was used for barbed wire reinforcements during the war that has been left stuck in the ground. This is what the memorial park looked like after the battle. And here's a map that displays the trenches, the layout, and everything that was going on around during the battle. And here's a little comparison. This was the reserve trench for the Newfoundland Regiment, and it is marked out by the road. In the car park, on the floor, it's marked out where the trench went backwards, and it's also marked into the grass ever so slightly as well, and you can see it went all the way back down there into the fields. Finally, we visited the Thiepval Memorial to the missing, and we saw the museum there. On the top you can see the French and the UK flags. Written on the walls of this memorial is over 72,000 missing servicemen who are still out there, have still not been found. Next up, I took a little sidetrack to see where my relative fought during the World War. His regiment took a German trench in this field and occupied it for a little while until they lost their flanks and had to retreat back. Here you can see where I was located on Google Maps, and comparing it to a trench map that shows the German trench, which is at the top of the hill where I was stood, and just down the bottom of the hill you can see the British trench. So this field where I was standing contained the German trench that my great-great-grandfather took and occupied in battle for a little while. Also, as we were walking back, we discovered on the side of the field an unexploded shell, which was quite terrifying. All of the French and Belgian farmers have to be instructed that if they do ever plough up unexploded mines, because it's very common because most of the farming land was battlefield, they have to carry it to the corner of the field and then call out the bomb disposal experts to deal with it. The next day we spent in northern France visiting the Forgotten Front between Flanders and the Somme. We started in the Loos battlefield, the scene of the first major British offensive of World War I. Here is the Dud Corner Cemetery. Each grave contains information about the soldier, but not every grave has information, as sometimes a body gets dug up that cannot be identified in any way, shape or form. The names written on the walls are names that are still missing soldiers from the battle. We then visited the Lens 14 to 18 Museum, which explains the rich history of this region. It's mostly a picture museum, but there's also some equipment like these Lee Enfield rifles, old bayonets, revolvers and grenades. Here you can see all the pictures, which shows just the scale of the war and loads of old trenches. This is a little model of the first ever tank that was used during the Battle of the Somme. In these pictures you can see the mass destruction that villages and towns around experienced during the World War. These pictures show the terrible living conditions the soldiers had to live through, sleeping in dugouts and mud. This one shows a soldier having to try and make his way through a flooded trench. Here you can see a French helmet, a British helmet and a German helmet. We then visited the city of Arras to have lunch. Here you can see the town square and the cathedral there. One of the places we visited, there's a little Lego cemetery which I thought was very cool. This was located in the Commonwealth War Graves Commission Visitor Centre. I didn't take any picture or videos here, but this was a centre that explains how each grave is made. We then went to the Arras Memorial. To end the day, we visited the stunning Vimy Ridge Memorial Park at Hill 145 to examine the attack by Canadian forces here in April 1917. This contains more untouched cratered land, as you can see. This was a very high vantage point, and as you can see, it got very, very battered. Here is the amazingly constructed memorial to the Canadians. This memorial was unveiled in July 1936 by King Edward VIII. When the Canadians attacked here, the Germans had to retreat back down this hill. The sheer amount of craters on the top of this ridge just truly shows the scale and destruction during the World War. And here, as you can see, on the way back, we drove past another massive crater. Not quite as big as the Loch Nagur crater, but it's still quite big compared to all the other ones around it. On the final day, the tour started in Flanders around the Belgian city of Ypres. We begun by looking at the commemoration of Britain's dead at the Tyne-Cot Cemetery, the largest British war cemetery in the world. The total burials in the cemetery is just shy of 12,000, 8,300 of which are unnamed. This area was captured by the 3rd Australian Division and the New Zealand Division on the 4th of October 1917. The Germans possessed 3 bunkers on this ridge, one of which being under the main cross in the centre of the cemetery, and through this little hole you can still see the original brick wall of it. The other 2 bunkers are exposed, and you can see the damage they took. Not a lot. You can see through some of the peepholes, just the thickness of the walls and how unpleasant it looks inside. You can even see some of the steel reinforcements sticking out of the concrete. The sheer size of this cemetery is unbelievable. Here you can see the details on each grave. Next we visited the St. Julian Canadian War Memorial, which marks the site of the very first gas attack used by the Germans in the war. Next we went to the Langemark German Cemetery and saw how Germany commemorated their dead. On each of the gravestones you can see there is around 5 to 10 different German soldier names. In the very centre is a mass grave containing 25,000 German soldiers and 3 British soldiers. On the concrete blocks surrounding it are all the names of the soldiers buried in there. Next up we went to Polygon Woods, where the Battle of Polygon Woods took place. The battle was fought during the 3rd Battle of Ypres and took place on the 26th of September to the 3rd of October 1917. In there is a picture of a French farmer finding an unexploded bombshell in his... Next to Polygon Woods is the Brothers in Arms Memorial. This is a very moving memorial that represents 2 brothers, and one of the brothers died in the arms of his other brother. Here is a picture of the 2 brothers, and here is a bit of information about the history of it and the erection of the memorial. The brother who survived actually lived till he was 86. The end of the memorial is 2 circles representing the 2 brothers' souls tied forever. Afterwards we visited a place that made this my favourite place we visited, as we got to walk through preserved trenches at the Sanctuary Wood Trench Museum on Hill 64. This is some of the last original World War I trenches still surviving in Flanders. We even got the chance to walk through some original old tunnels in the trenches.
Were you allowed to go in there?
We didn't even know if we were meant to be in there because of how unsafe it seemed. But either way, we continued through and explored the tunnels, and I got a few funny clips in there.
Hello. I'm scared. I don't think we're supposed to be down here, are we?
Probably not, no.
You have?
Something's going to come out of that.
Yeah. Pair of eyes. What would you do? Oh, it's about as far as I went before I got scared.
What is this?
Go on, dude.
That's a f***ing bat.
Eventually, we got to the end of the tunnels. We were all very shocked that you're allowed to go through here with no health and safety regulations whatsoever, as there is literal old sharp steel, corrugated metal sticking out around every corner. Here you can see examples of dugouts. These are original preserved British trenches, and it helps to really understand the compactness and the misery of being inside a trench. These trenches were made in 1915/16, and they are the site of the British second line from 1915 to 1916. The trenches were a lot deeper, typically 7 foot.
Right, watch the ceiling for bats.
There was some very uneven ground and literal electrical cables hanging down from the ceiling.
Well, there's some lumps.
Trip.
Bollocks. You have to go apart on here. Loose rock, by the way. Some nice cables.
Little view of what it would have looked like poking your head over the top. Just quickly before we left, I looked in a little brick bunker. Not much to see in there, very empty, very small, but would have helped for cover. After that amazing visit, we visited the Commonwealth Berks Cemetery extension. This has a total burial number of 880, and again, loads of missing soldiers on the walls. which commemorates more than 11,000 British and Empire servicemen who died in the area during the First World War and have no known grave. Across the road is the Hyde Park Corner Cemetery, which is located directly across the road. Finally, we visited the city of Ypres, where we had tea. We got a chance to see the Ypres Cathedral in the city centre, which was just absolutely incredible. And just to put into perspective of how much they had to rebuild, this is a picture of the city after heavy bombardment during the First World War. And you can see the ruins of the cathedral there. To round off the trip completely, we attended the incredibly moving last post ceremony at the Menin Gate Memorial, held at 8 PM every evening. Inside of the Menin Gate bears the names of over 54,000 missing soldiers. And there you have it. That was the All Quiet on the Western Front Battlefield Tour by Ledger Holidays. This was a very incredible, interesting and moving trip. I definitely recommend it to anyone who's into history, or maybe if you're not into history. I think it will truly help people my age and younger generations especially to understand the true sacrifice and misery that war is. So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed, found this interesting. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.